last episode, we went through the horrible year of 2020. It was made a lot better because you had contact with family. And even though the march that never ended caused you problems, a week after we finally met your family, we couldn't meet them anymore.
It was a tragic year for a lot of people, but I was very fortunate that it was one of the very best years of my life, despite everything else that was happening in the world around us.
Welcome back to Finding Gina Marie, our video podcast about discovering family and our journey to relocate to Europe. This is episode 10. If you've missed any of our other episodes, you can go to findingginamarie.com. We also have contact information on there, so you can get a hold of us.
I'm Judy.
And I'm Kevin. Yeah, and I think it was made easier for me because we moved into our new apartment.
One of the things we did for ourselves in 2020 was to buy a couple of e-bikes. With so much of the virus still strong in San Francisco and everywhere else, we felt like it made a lot more sense to avoid public transportation if we could.
Yeah, and we also weren't traveling in 2020, so we didn't spend money on travel. We figured we'll spend a little bit of money on e-bikes and have some more outdoor time while we're in the city all the time. And it was tricky because San Francisco's hills are so tall that we were starting off with these really inexpensive e-bikes, and my friends who were good with e-bikes and knew what they were all about said, "Oh, you're in San Francisco. You don't want those wimpy ones. You will not be happy." So we did some test runs, and yeah, they were right. Some of the lesser bikes didn't get us up the hills without a lot of effort.
When we were clearing out our clutter from our storage unit, one of the things that we came across was my road bike. I did a lot of bike riding when we were in Houston, and I traveled long distances on bike.
Yeah, you went from Houston to Austin on the MS-150 a couple times, 3 times?
4.
4 times. Wow.
This one really is 4.
I'll look it up. We'll see.
I know I'm right on this one. Believe me, when you do 180 miles between cities, including hills, you remember those.
Yeah. You've been wanting to pull that bike out ever since we moved.
But I knew that I did not have the stamina or the leg power to be able to make it up, especially the hill that we live on. But we were getting it out. We thought, all right, let's sell it. It was a fairly expensive bike, and it made sense to do something that made sense for both of us. Because originally I was looking for a bike for me, and I think that you bolted onto that, which is great because we spend a lot of time riding bikes now, and it's wonderful.
I certainly wanted to ride bikes. It's just that I was never the great bike rider that you were, so I was always holding you back on your journeys on the bike. I'm like, just slow down a little bit. Kevin's got to catch up. But e-bikes, hey, maybe I can stay with you. So another thing that happened right at the beginning of 2021 is you started making your list of, here's the things I want to accomplish in 2021.
I don't believe in New Year's resolutions, but I do believe that I want to be intentional with your year and what you want to accomplish during it. I had various things on the list, a specific number of books I wanted to read, specific number of letters that I wanted to write. With everything that we'd been doing, one of the things that was really important was to learn Italian.
Right.
It had been one of the things in the back of my mind, even since I was a little girl. But I know myself well enough that if I don't set a goal and actually take specific actions, I'm not going to accomplish it.
Years ago, I tried to learn Spanish when we were in Texas, and it was kind of useless because I really wasn't using it. It was a half-hearted effort to learn a language. But when you said, let's learn Italian, if we ever want to live in Italy, I'd really like to know Italian and not be the ignorant American that says everyone should speak English. And even when we're in Italy, I said, well, if we use it, if we both learn it together and we actually spend time using it, I'm all for it. I really was excited about that idea.
Well, we did talk about potentially living in Italy when we were visiting in 2019. 2017? 2017.
Was it 2019?
I don't know.
It was 2019.
Okay, 2019.
I got one.
Time, it goes by so quickly.
2020 messed us all up. It's okay.
That's right. But it was a logical thing to want to do. I don't know. I feel like we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the right program is. Yeah. And quite frankly, I don't think there is a right program. But for us, what's been working has been Duolingo. I think I'm on 511 days straight. I think you have a few more days beyond me. But let us know in the comments if you want us to do any kind of review about Duolingo and our thoughts about it, whether it's something that would be interesting to you, whether it's Italian or any other language. We'd be happy to give you our thoughts and experiences regarding it. So now we have these cool new bikes, and it makes sense for us to get use out of them. And we've always gone to Napa when our daughter's in town because she likes Napa. And
wine. Who doesn't like wine? In beautiful outdoor environments. It's great.
So we thought maybe we would make a birthday trip. You were turning 59, and it just seemed like a nice thing to do for us to get out and have a weekend.
We had done our short rides around the city. We had gone across the Golden Gate Bridge, which was a fun ride, especially fun because that ride back across the bridge is uphill. And previous bikes we've taken over have kind of lost steam along with me losing steam, and their batteries were kind of wearing thin. These Turbo Vado bikes were just brilliant. We got back and I was like, that was fun. It was actually fun to do. Maybe we could do longer trips. And you came up with the idea for going to wine country, going to Napa.
If you're unfamiliar with what an e-bike actually is, it is pedal assist. If you're not pedaling, that motor doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And it has 3 degrees of power. You can cycle harder and you'll go faster. It saves on your legs, but it's not free.
Yeah. Seriously, those bikes go pedal assist at 28 miles an hour.
I can't overemphasize this enough. The assist helps, but some of our San Francisco hills are still really hard, even with the assist.
You're just not sweating as much.
There are people who walk up these hills with their bike because it's so steep.
Yeah. Even some of the local rental bikes don't do too well on it. Our daughter can attest to that. She didn't have our powerful bikes, and she's like, you guys can't just go up these hills and just leave me down here. This is not right. One of the big problems before we got on this Napa tour was trying to get our bikes ready. I wanted to make sure that they were serviced, so I planned on taking them in the shop. I scheduled it. You and I got on the bikes because we ride to a local bike shop in San Francisco. On the way there, you got a nail in your tire, got a flat tire, so we had to get that bike picked up and taken in. So that was first thing. Next thing was I asked them to do a service on it to make sure we could take this 29, 30-mile one-way trip and 60 miles both ways. And they said, great, yeah, we'll do the service, but we're leaving in 3 days. Then they broke your motor on your bike while it's being serviced. There's software, there's firmware. They upgraded it, and they said, oh, sorry, it's not going to come back on. We have to get a part. There's a problem. I said, well, we're leaving tomorrow. Is there any way you can give us a loaner or something? Well, the only loaner they had was a smaller bike. A very nice
It wasn't
bike.
as much, it didn't have as much power.
Yeah, it was a class 2 that still required you to pedal, but didn't have the high speed of mine. I think it was only 18 miles an hour and 19 miles an hour as a top speed. And it was just smaller. So your tires are smaller. You had to work harder on the whole trip.
Yes, I did.
And then the ride home from the bike shop, the chain broke on that bike.
Yes, on our big hill,
On our
because
big
it's
hill.
such a big hill.
So I had to have them send out a service tech to our apartment building to replace the bike chain. And he said, I'll put on a heavy duty one. I said, please, because this whole trip is on a bike and I'm already feeling like, are we jinxed? Should we be doing this? It was very stressful getting ready for this.
And especially the understanding was it wasn't just 29 miles each way. The entire time that we were going to be there was going to be riding bikes to get anywhere we wanted to go.
Yeah, we did. We rode a lot during that whole trip there.
So we really needed it to be predictable and do what it was supposed to do.
Yeah, and
reliable.
I started getting a little concerned. It's like, well, should we have been doing this? Are these signs that we really shouldn't be riding our bikes? But you were a trooper and you pushed through and you rode the little toy bike and I had the big bike. And she's already shorter than me. So she's on this little bike and I'm on the bigger bike. She was not happy about that part of it.
Did somebody think that I was your daughter?
Probably. They
I think
always do.
so. Which, of course, there's no way.
You always do look 30 years younger than me. It doesn't matter how you slice it. Instead of going all the way there on bike, we found out that if we go to the port of San Francisco, we can take a ferry that gets us to Vallejo, which then shortens our time and our distance to get to Napa.
So we're riding to the ferry, and then we're riding once we get off.
So it's a mile to a mile and a half to the ferry in San Francisco, and then it's a ferry ride to Vallejo, and then it's about 28, 29 miles total that we're biking to Napa. And some of that trip is really nice. Some of it in the wine country is really nice. The part that's from Vallejo to getting near Napa was some pretty busy roads and not exactly fun. There was some near highway conditions, and I did not like riding the bikes near that stuff. But the rest of the trip was glorious, especially on the Napa Valley Wine Trail.
Yeah, it was lovely. And yes, it was very challenging to be able to be on the side of the road where there were a lot of
Massive trucks flying by.
And it's designed to allow bike.
They had a bike lane in name only, a little white stripe, and you were right there with traffic. That was not fun.
And I think that was even one of the things we were concerned with if we considered to make the whole trip ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
So because we were taking the ferry, one of the things that was kind of a trickier aspect of it was that we had to be at the mercy of when the ferry ran. Oh, and it did not run on the weekends. So
mainly because of COVID. So these schedules are all limited because of COVID. We weren't getting the options that we normally would have to get to Vallejo.
It ended up being, I think, a 4-day trip.
We had to go on Friday. We had to come back on a Monday just to hit those ferry rides. We had 4 wineries, and they were all really good. The last one we went to, Hess Collection, was just beautiful. It had some marvelous food, really great wine. I mean, they all were decent wine, but it just felt like that was a step up from everything else. And it was our last one, which meant that the bikes, we didn't have the bikes fully charged that day. And it turned out this winery was the furthest away on the steepest hill. So we had about 6 hills to get up for it. And we really pushed ourselves to get to this winery, but it's so worth it. Highly recommended.
We did a food and wine pairing for that winery, and it was so well done. In fact, we got an ATV tour of the entire vineyard.
Yeah, and then we had a nice birthday dinner for me, and that restaurant served us way too many extras. We ordered a meal, and then you told them it was my birthday, so then they had this other platter, and then something else for little chocolates, and then a birthday cake at the end. I mean, we had to get back to our hotel on bikes, so it's like, I can't ride a bike if I'm this stuffed. So in addition to this lovely birthday gift that you gave me of the Napa bike trip, we also had planned earlier to visit Buffalo. My aunt and uncle were celebrating their 90th birthdays. So,
which, just to say, they were both turning 90. What an incredible thing. So impressive. They've been married for, I don't know, almost 70 years.
Yeah. You had yet to see your sisters. So this was just a great combination trip to do both those things and finally meet more of the family.
First of all, it was great because all of your family were gathered in one place. And as an aside, it was so expensive to travel to Buffalo, New York during COVID.
It was more than some of our European flights.
Yes, it was. In fact, to rent a car was ridiculous amount of money.
We couldn't. They weren't even listing cars. The whole country was out of rental cars.
Yes.
Yeah. So my uncle and aunt's birthday party was really fabulous. As you said, so many people showed up. We got to meet family all in one place, and a lot of family that I didn't even expect to meet. Yeah, it was a really glorious trip, and it was so nice to see so many people in one spot. This whole trip was just drenched in family, to kind of connect with everybody that was there and connecting with people that you've never met before in person.
Yes, but before we did that, I got a chance to spend time with my brother and his lovely wife and 2 of their grown children and enjoy Buffalo foods. Yeah. So there is no time you can visit Buffalo without going to Mighty Taco and having Ted's hot dogs and Buffalo pizza. I don't know. Nobody needs to cook because the food there is just quite good.
That didn't stop people from cooking, but
It didn't. In fact, one of the first things that we did after we spent time with my brother and his wife was to go and meet my middle sister. And that was just an incredible time. This is the one that we had met originally when I was first getting to know family. She was the first person outside of my cousin. We had appetizers, we had Aperol spritzes, and if you don't know about Aperol spritzes, it's quite an Italian thing, which just, I don't know, I guess I feel like everybody has done such a great job of exposing me to all kinds of Italian foods that it's just, it excites me because I feel like
introducing more Italian culture.
Well, we've seen them in Italy, but we've never actually had aperitifs and aperitivos. So knowing that we hadn't had a chance to do that and then having my sister have them for us was just really fun.
Yeah, they took us for a walk around. Was it Delaware Park?
Yes. And we got to see the little flamingos and
big flamingo boats.
Yeah, big flamingos.
Big pink flamingo boats. Like, wow, really?
Yes. And we had a lovely dinner with great conversation and an opportunity to meet my nephew who is turning 17. But it didn't really feel as though these were strangers or people that you had to be uncomfortable with because we were just meeting them for the first time. It's felt like we have been friends forever.
Well, it's like your family here in California. Everyone's so welcoming. Everyone's so just appreciative that we're taking the time to visit them and spend time with them. Like, of course we will.
And even though we didn't grow up together, it's just amazing how many things we have in common. And so we were never at a loss for words. And I don't know, it was wonderful to be able to spend time with somebody that you didn't grow up with, but you feel like you've known forever. And then the following day, we went and spent the afternoon and evening with my youngest sister and her family. She's got 2 sons, and it was a great time. We ended up bringing Paula's Donuts, which I want us to include a clip of because they're amazing donuts, and I've never had them growing up.
I think we were required to pick up Paula's Donuts.
Well, I wanted to pick up something.
I never heard of them before, and somebody said, oh, you need to get Paula's Donuts. Of course, I let her go in the shop to pick these things up.
It's a kid in the candy store.
Yeah, so I'm out there in the car going, where is she? What's going on? I know there's a little bit of a line. You came out with like 4,000 donuts or something. I don't know.
A little bit for everybody. But I will say their cannoli donuts were amazing. So
yeah, I was on a sugar high after that. Plus, they fed us so much. I don't know who they thought we were, but well, you got to have some of this. You got to have some of that. It felt very Italian. It felt very welcoming and very much a generous family gathering.
Yes, it was, again, amazing, where I feel like we've known each other forever. Everything was fun and easy, and it was cool to hang out with my nephews. I don't know, the time went way too fast for both of my sisters. It's hard when you could really spend an entire week together and still have more to say or more to catch up on and more to know. We did also, she opened up albums, and I took a bunch of photographs of her photographs. So some of the experiences of my mother and my grandparents and all of this other family that I've met already, just to see various stages of their lives. I don't know. It's just a wonderful thing.
We also took a trip around Buffalo, found some family spots. I think it was one of the places your mother lived or your family lived.
Oh, we went and saw where she grew, like her family home.
Right.
That was so fun.
Yeah.
And the church that, unfortunately, it closed during COVID, but it was my intention to have gone in 2020 when it was shutting down, before it shut down.
Oh.
But unfortunately, that happened like without fanfare because of COVID. Still, we walked by and we saw it, and I think that everybody in the family was baptized there, made their first communion and confirmation. I don't know, is very special.
And it's one of the few times we actually went to Buffalo when it wasn't winter. So this was lovely to be outside with everybody, sharing parks and backyards, and just lots of good family time.
Yes, it was absolutely surreal to kind of finally have all of this come together in a way that was 2 years in the making.
Exactly.
The night before we left town, one of the things that I didn't actually set up in advance, but after some prompting from various family members, I decided to reach out to my father's brother. And we had talked on the phone a couple of times.
He was pretty helpful trying to get some information for you and try to get you in touch with your father.
Right. While I was in Buffalo, it made sense for me to at least reach out to him to see if he was available to meet. I mean, he's my uncle. Even if I can't get connected with my father, it makes sense for me to like build a relationship with his brother.
Yeah, to be fair, it was a last minute thing.
Sure. It was the night before. I had called him and said, tomorrow is my last day here. If there's any way at all, I would love to spend some time with you and just stop by briefly or meet somewhere and just say hello. I left a voicemail and he didn't get back to me in time. I certainly understood, but I was also hoping that even if we didn't have any kind of relationship, it would be valuable to me to be able to find out who genealogically his family was, for the sake of doing dual citizenship applications. Right. He ended up sending me, when we were back in San Francisco, pictures of my grandparents and gave me their names. So after decompressing for a little bit and processing some of this information, I reached out to a company called Legacy Tree Genealogists to find out what exactly would be involved in trying to get dual citizenship. They came back with a quote of $5,600 to do 50 hours of research on the genealogy.
And that means it was just finding where your family belonged in the tree.
Yes and no. So part of it was to find out I think it was to actually obtain the birth certificates and marriage licenses and those kinds of documents.
Okay.
But it was not to actually apply for dual citizenship or anything else. All they were going to do was hand me a binder of information, and then I had to go on to the next thing.
All right.
I feel like the part of that was a deal breaker, was that they could spend all of this time researching and not really get to where I needed them to be. So it didn't really make sense to spend that much money and then still not know how to go through the process.
Yeah, because I was confused about what we'd actually have to do to make this all happen. It's fine to know everyone's birth and death and relation to each other, but how does that get us to dual citizenship?
So I think we both agreed that it really didn't make sense to move forward with that company that was really only giving us a piece of the process. I came across another company called Italian Dual Citizenship, and they were in some of the forums that I was looking at online. And also, I think if you do a search about Italian Dual Citizenship, they come up as one of the first choices.
And there were some good ratings, so I liked them.
Some really good ratings.
Yeah.
So I felt pretty comfortable reaching out to them. They required you to fill out a long document intake form to be able to understand who your family members are. And they do like some initial research into the names, kind of what it seems like that other company was going to do, but they give you answers fairly quickly, as opposed to, well, we'll spend 25 to 50 hours researching and then you'll end up with just who these people are. Correct. More like genealogy researchers for the first company and more dual citizenship company for the second.
Right. They were focused on the whole process, which personally I liked because we're busy people. We have full-time jobs and activities outside of that. The concept of learning how to do this paperwork, especially in a foreign country, which we couldn't get to very easily at this point. I don't know. I was interested in this company that was one-stop shopping for everything.
A quick overview of some of the things that you would need is you have to have the lineage that will make it possible for you to have dual citizenship. And that's the thing that they were going to check. Are the people that are in your birth line eligible for you to get dual citizenship? Which means that either they hadn't naturalized or that they still had retained their Italian dual citizenship. There's a lot of variables because Italian law is constantly changing and it's very bureaucratic. So
did we have to pay for this pre-processing the intake form?
No, that was free. So the barrier to entry was none.
Yeah. That's what I like too. It seemed like, okay, here we're going to get solid information about what we really need to do without having to spend $5,000 or more just to find that out.
This company is a turnkey solution in that once they identify that from their initial research, they can see that you have a line that works, then you can pay them to put together a package, which typically involves actually obtaining all of those birth certificates, including from Italy and from the US. They then also need to have an apostille, and that is kind of like a notary signature, basically authorizing that the government person who signed it is who they say that they are.
Does that mean an Italian government official?
That needs to be done for the Italian government.
Okay.
And then documents need to be translated, and depending on your circumstances, you either have to apply these in a court of law in Rome, and that's actually been changed. Now it's all throughout the country, but it previously, up until maybe May or June of this year, all the cases that existed were going into Rome. And now it's whatever municipality, comune is what it's called in Italy, maybe your birth line is part of. There are some people with circumstances easier than ours that can just go to a
Italian consulate
in the city that you actually live in.
Yeah, we have an Italian consulate here in San Francisco, so that would have been very convenient.
Alas, not to be, but.
Were you treating this whole thing as your father's side when you were talking to them, or did they give you a direction on which side of the family to work with, or did you just give them all the information and let them kind of sort through it?
So in this situation, I was really only going through my father's side because everybody on my mother's side had pretty much thought that it wasn't possible for us to pursue that line.
That's what I thought I remembered. So you contacted this company, gave them your father's family information. What did they come back with?
Interestingly enough, they didn't come back at all. I didn't end up hearing from them. And it wasn't until 2022 that I was on a forum, and we'll talk about it more in another episode.
Well, 2021 was definitely the year of family for you actually getting together with your family, the fact that you got to go see your mother, you got to see your sisters. I got to see a lot of my family and you with me. So we did pack a lot into 2021. It wasn't just sitting around thinking, well, how can we do paperwork for dual citizenship? You know, we certainly are going to talk about that in an upcoming episode because there's a lot to talk about there.
So before we close out this episode, I can't go without talking about the incredible trip that I had with my mother in July for her birthday. Things had opened up enough that we've been able to make a couple of trips, and there was no way the year was going to close out without me spending time with my mother in person again.
And seeing where she lived and seeing her friends and her family down there.
For as important as it was for Kevin to be part of meeting family for the first time, this was the trip that I felt like was most important for my mother and I to just spend time together. So you stayed home, right. I stayed with her, and we just had a lovely period of time celebrating her birthday and just
the mother-daughter bonding time.
There was a part of me that thought, well, maybe it would be good for you to come along and do some of the honeydews that need to always get done.
You only want me for my skills at tech and whatever other carpentry skills need to be done.
At the end of the day, the decision was we were just going to have a fun time together, get to know her city a little bit more, get to spend time just being together, doing ordinary things, and, you know, just how somebody lives. This is my mother. It was important to me to understand what cereal she eats and, you know, the really basic things that are just things that you would inherently know as a daughter.
Yeah, the routines.
Yeah, routines. And yeah, so we did all of that. We had an absolutely incredible time together. It was absolutely wonderful.
Well, I am thrilled that we had such a year of family, and I'm thrilled that you got to spend this quality time with your mother and all that bonding that happened. We have some really cool stuff that we decided to do in 2022 this year that we're actually recording. We've come to date now. We decided that we're going to actually spend some money on going forward with this dual citizenship and in earnest try to see if we can push it forward. That's in the next episode.
We hope you're enjoying our story so far. And if you'd like to follow along with us, we hope you would click the subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. We'd also really appreciate a like on YouTube, leave a review for us on your favorite podcast player, and leave us a comment. We would love to hear what you're thinking about our episodes, what you might like to hear a little bit more about.
If you want to get a hold of us, you can go to findingginamarie.com. We have our Twitter information on there. You can hit us up on Twitter as well as leaving us comments because we certainly love the dialogues we've had with some people, and it's made our experience all that much better.
Until next time.
Until next time. And there are ones that you can get that are Class 2 bikes that you don't have to pedal, but they also don't have a lot of power for the things we needed, the hills we needed. So we got Class 3 bikes, which are just a little more oomph for those hills.
Wait, I think you're mistaken.
Nope.
Like Class 2, you don't have to pedal?
Some of them.
Really?
Yeah. I just looked it up because I had some friends saying, you know, they got these Class 2 bikes and they didn't have to pedal. I'm like, what? I had to look up the classes again, and yeah.
I thought it would have been a class above ours, but
Nope.
live and learn.
We don't have a class above ours.
We are best in class.
We are best in class.